everyone. I'm Kristy Knichel, co-host of the LLC podcast. I also have a special co-host today, Casey Coffey. She's with me today from Knichel Logistics. It's an honor to introduce listeners to inspiring women who are making a real difference in the logistics and supply chain. And with the LLC podcast, you'll hear inspirational stories, both personal and professional challenges our guests have overcome, how their backgrounds help to shape who they are today, and how they empower and give back to their communities and often the world. So joining me today, I have a special guest, Monica Thornton. She has been with Seawide Express since 2015, working in operations and currently in sales. She is self-directed and a highly motivated individual with proven team results in operations and sales, driven to excel and always looking to improve the customer experience, internal sales team, and revenue to meet or exceed company goals. She has been in the supply chain industry since 2006, working for various companies like Panther Logistics, Novelis, and Unishippers. On the side, she has a cool gig being an artist, which is very cool. Her company, Hex Sign Design, she started back in 1999. She loves to sell her artwork on her website. She is also involved in her community. She spends a lot of her time trying to connect the community and sports organizations for the youth, such as rec baseball, travel softball, and high school softball programs. Awesome. Thank you for being on the show today, Monica.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Monica, for being here. Before we, start getting into your background here, because you have an extensive background in supply chain, particularly in LTL, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your education, early influencers, and maybe mentors along the way?
Sure. I appreciate what you had to say about me. It's always interesting to hear someone talk about you, and you kind of make me blush. So I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. I went to college at Marquette University in Wisconsin. I think back in the day when parents expected you to go to college. So went to college, didn't know what I wanted to be, had a different major probably every semester I was in college. Eventually graduated with a degree in anthropology. I wanted to travel the world and find buried treasure. By the time I finished college, I just wanted to go home.
Right.
Yeah, so I did. I went home with a degree in anthropology and in studio art. Moved back to Cleveland, and I kind of fell into a job being a junior high science teacher. And I did that for 6 years. It was an amazing experience. Definitely an interesting experience when you're young and you don't have children versus being a grown adult. You definitely get a different perspective as you get older. But I enjoyed being a teacher. I enjoyed working with the kids and getting them involved, getting the community involved, and just having fun with it. Trying to think back to what I didn't like about school and do the opposite to try to engage kids and get them interested. So I enjoyed doing that, but all good things come to an end. So one day after our school had closed, I needed to find a job, and I lived in Seville, Ohio, where Panther was based at the time. And I was sitting at a red light, and I saw a truck pass by, and I thought, wow, there's a lot more trucks around here lately. They must be doing really good. So I called them up and said I needed a job, and they were having a job fair that day. So they said, come on in. And that's where I got my start in logistics.
Oh, that's awesome. So my first follow-up to that would be your children. Did you get to teach them the different ways to learn that didn't work when you were a teacher?
So my oldest son, so I have 4 kids. They're 7, 16, 19, and 22. My oldest actually used to go to school with me. I had the luxury of being able to bring him to the classroom. And when he was a toddler, he actually kind of became a teaching tool for me for some of the kids that I had in junior high that had either some emotional issues or some learning problems. And he actually helped make other kids successful being there for him, which was really interesting. as I got older and I had my kids in school, I tried to avoid ever telling someone I was a teacher, because you don't want to walk into a scenario where where people feel like you're saying that you know better, or that you're their equal somehow because you've been there. So I kind of avoided that for years, and I always let my kids kind of do their own thing, and tried not to really involve myself all that much in their school outside of sports.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do you ever miss teaching, or do you feel like you apply it to what you are doing now?
I actually do miss teaching. Teaching is a very, very rewarding job for people that are there for the right reason. So I think I was fortunate when I kind of fell into that work, that I was working in an inner city Cleveland school. And so I had lower income students. They were pretty much less privileged all around in the opportunities that they had aside from school. So I started teaching in private schools. And so we had children that were on a voucher program where they could come from lower income areas, higher risk areas, and come to schools that were in safer areas and get maybe a better education than what would have been there in the public schools. So I found it rewarding to work with them because they enjoyed being there. I tell people to this day that, you hear the saying, you never know what someone's going through. For a lot of kids, the 6 to 8 hours a day that they're at school, that's the best 6 to 8 hours of their day. Sometimes that's where they are in the cleanest environment, the safest environment. It's where they may get the best food or any food at all. Seeing what I saw as a teacher really opened my eyes to what the world really looks like at all levels, because people come in all shapes and sizes. They come from all different kinds of backgrounds, and they come from all different types of situations. So it's sad, the things that you see as a teacher, but at the same time, to know that you are kind of a ray of sunshine to a child during the day on any given occasion, it is really rewarding.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And it's nice that you have that background, and you really seem to have made a difference, and hopefully can make a difference in the future as well with that too.
Hopefully.
So speaking, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's kind of funny, the Facebook and the old MySpace, those things kind of came around in the time that I was teaching and the time that I left. And so, when we were younger, social media really wasn't a thing. And when I left teaching, it was growing, and these kids were trying to connect with me on things like Facebook. And so I started thinking about it, and I said, once they're in college, once they're 18, they're in college, they're getting married, these kids are trying to reach back out to me for these things, I'll start accepting some of these invitations. So I am connected. I'm not a big social media user outside of LinkedIn, but I have a Facebook profile. But I have a lot of ex-students on LinkedIn and Facebook that have shared their journeys in life. I've been a reference to them for going to college or getting jobs. I've seen them get married and have kids. So that part of it has been really rewarding, to actually get to see kids, beyond their younger years, when you're helping to hopefully influence them in good ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's truly a statement to see how impactful you've been on their life, that, it's been how long since you've been teaching and they still remember you. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So you're the mentor maybe to them even now at an older age. And I'm sure you're very excited to see their, have success in their life coming out of some of those situations. So
absolutely. I have students that are connected to me to this day that have become very wealthy and successful business owners, and some of them that came from being homeless when they were students of mine. So to see, and I can't say that it has anything to do with me. Hopefully there's something in there that they took away from their time with me, but to see any individual succeed between those extremes is amazing.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. So do you think you'll ever get back into teaching or do it at some type of level?
I don't think so. I've kind of found a niche. You mentioned that I'm involved with youth sports, and I've kind of found a different outlet for that. So we have 4 kids. We are firm believers that if your kids are active and engaged in things outside of school, it keeps them busy, it keeps them making friends, learning to communicate, keeps them out of trouble. So my husband has coached rec baseball for 20 plus years. So 3 of our kids have played ball. One of our daughters is a very good athlete, very good softball player. So she plays a little bit higher level ball and plays school ball. So I have kind of taken what I learned as a teacher for fundraising and community involvement. And instead of trying to host like a science fair or some kind of event at the school to bring in the community, now I do it for baseball and softball. And I think that times have changed since, back when we were in school, if you played ball for the town you lived in, you usually got like a t-shirt with some really bad, printing press work on it for like the local auto mechanic or something. We're trying to kind of bring the community back and get people involved. Like we want people to come see these games. We want people to put their name out to advertise for these teams and in return invite them to come to the games, to advertise for them, on social media, putting banners on the fences, all kinds of things. We'll do the concession stand and name foods after you for the night. Pretty much just being creative and trying to help advertise and market local businesses in with the school, because these kids, when they come out of school, a lot of these kids are going to be the future employees of these local companies. And it's really important, especially in high school, that they're getting some kind of networking and communication with the kids and the community.
Yeah, networking is huge. I mean, I think a lot of people underestimate the benefits of it. So teaching it from that young of an age is huge for them.
Yeah, we're all on LinkedIn, and professionally we all are active here on LinkedIn every day. But the reality is our kids aren't really doing networking face to face. They're on their phones, they're on their computers. They don't have to go to each other's houses, to see each other play a game. They can do it on their phone or their computer. So actively getting people to, come out of their house, their business, and go to events is a huge thing to keep communication skills good with people, because I think technology has started to kind of make that decline.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's interesting you say that. Before we get into some more, because I know Casey wants to talk about the business and whatnot, but I'm part of a organization called the Positive Athlete and have been for a very long time. And it's working with high schools, students, and ones that you don't have to be the best at the sport, but it's showing up being positive. And he actually just got someone to invest, a billionaire to invest, to bring it across the whole country. And he's building an app for the students and also to network them with the sponsors like myself for the future employment, like you just talked about. So that's something I'll have to talk to you about offline.
Yeah, I didn't know that about you. So
yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk.
Absolutely. Well, I'll let Casey go ahead. She's got some questions and want to learn more about what you do.
Okay. Let's move right on into a little bit more about Seawide and what Seawide does. And I know there's some exciting news that you're ready to share. So you got the floor.
There is. All right. So Seawide Express, we started Seawide back in 2015. Got a phone call one day from a lady saying that there was a guy that wanted to start up a company. And I think they saw my profile on LinkedIn. And I thought, okay, that's a pretty cool opportunity. Not a lot of people get to start a company. So I met with him, and obviously here I still am. So we started mid-year in 2015 to start Seawide with providing freight service to Hawaii at the time. And since then, in the last 9 years, we've added Guam and Alaska. So we are a domestic ocean provider, is a technical term. What we do in simple terms is we function like an LTL carrier would on the mainland, but we are loading LTL freight, parcel, sometimes even truckload, and we're putting it into mixed goods containers to ship to these points and deliver. So that, in a nutshell, is the simple version of what we do. We are a West Coast. It's called the Jones Act: Hawaii, Alaska, Guam, and Puerto Rico. We are really a West Coast Jones Act provider because we're part of a larger organization called AJC Logistics. And the AJC group has multiple business units that they own, including a division that already handles Puerto Rico. So Seawide was really started to complement and add to that business, so that when they said they were a Jones Act provider, that they're actually servicing all of the Jones Act.
Okay.
Very interesting.
That's very exciting. I did not know that about the Jones Act.
Yes. And I will tell you, so the Jones Act, you don't hear about the Jones Act often, and a lot of people have never heard of it. I can honestly say I had heard of it, but didn't understand really what it was when I started at Seawide. You usually hear kind of negative things that are connotated with it. It is old. It's going back into, World War I, World War II type times. So the reason behind it really is, was this idea to protect these offshore territories and states in times of war, to prevent from another country wanted to, invade Puerto Rico. The U.S. is going to send warships there and protect and troops, and we're going to ensure that things get to the people. They're not going to get cut off. So that's kind of like the most basic reasoning behind it. It is a little bit broad. You can certainly look it up if it's something that sounds of interest. But recently here, with the talk of the strike on the East Coast at the ports, it actually brought an opportunity for us to kind of talk to people when the topic came up and share how the Jones Act can really still be beneficial in modern times. So, if you something like a port strike and there's going to be, this loss in supply chain and stoppage in supply chain of goods moving, for the points that are in the Jones Act markets, they are protected so that does not happen to them. So should something like that have happened, goods would continue to flow to the market.
Oh no, looks like we lost you a little bit. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? Uh-oh. You're frozen.
Oh, here she goes. I was wondering if it was just me or not.
No, I could see it. Yeah, we've been having issues all day, no matter what side.
No.
She might have to restart and get back on, but I've heard of the Jones Act that she was talking about. I don't know that I remember exactly what that was as she explained.
Yeah, I've never heard of that at all.
Yeah, I remember hearing the term like a long time ago, and that's interesting, especially with the port strike, because we were just talking about that and how the disruptions in the supply chain that it causes. And it's not just like the East Coast and Houston area ports. It affects everywhere in the country. So that would be interesting to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll wait for her to get back on. She can probably edit some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure she can take it out.
Wait for her to get back on. The day, it's been a horrible day for these podcasts today.
No, it's really just been a day all around.
Yeah. Yeah, and you don't have to, because I just quickly did that, but like you can go off anything she says and continue to talk about that. You don't have to ask all the stuff. You know.
Yeah, I put down some of my own questions, took some notes. So,
Hey, I
You're
don't know what
back.
happened.
oh, you keep
It
freezing
seems
on
like-
us.
Yeah, it seems like the connection isn't so great recently. That's all right. We can have her edit this. But I was just telling Casey, like, I've heard of the Jones Act. I didn't remember exactly what it was. So it was interesting that you said that, because the other podcast I was on earlier was really talking about the disruptions in the supply chain. And one of them was talking about the East Coast port strike and how that affects other areas in the whole country, not just those areas in particular.
Right.
Yeah, because I mean, again, I think they kind of put the strike on hold when the hurricane hit, North Carolina, Florida area, and those goods were sitting there. Obviously, that's not going to be resolved until January. Hopefully, they resolve it before January. But
I kind of thought the same thing, that the weather would not be an opportune time for any individual or organization to, move forward in something like that.
right,
They're not going to get the support of many people. So hopefully that's not the only reason that didn't happen. I do kind of feel like come January that we may start, hearing things about that again, unfortunately, but hopefully not.
yeah. Well, it's good though that you guys and what you do in the areas you go to that are protected with the Jones Act in regards to that, because again, it's very damaging things to the communities when that happens.
These are really interesting points also, because and I'll speak to Hawaii and Alaska, but Hawaii and Alaska are often put into people's international divisions, most likely because it involves water transit. But then it kind of causes a little bit of confusion sometimes, because a lot of people, even in logistics, don't understand that shipping from the lower 48 to Hawaii and Alaska is a domestic shipment, just like any shipment between any other two states. You don't need to do anything different. There's no customs. There's no additional paperwork. It literally is exactly the same. The only difference is obviously there's a little bit more transit time, and it's going in an ocean container for a little trip. So they are unique markets. They don't produce anything really. There's not a lot that comes from these points. Obviously there's some coffee manufacturing, there's some alcohol manufacturing, there's mining, that may bring product out, but most things go in. They rely on the outside world for just about anything that we use in our day-to-day life or in our business life.
So speaking of that real quick, I would assume then the pricing is elevated because you're shipping those containers empty coming back.
So there is some other things that come back. So, one of the things, particularly in a place like Hawaii, they don't have landfills like we do here on the mainland. So dunnage is returning. We as a provider, we ship back from our terminals. We will ship back pallets, packaging that can be reused, anything like that. So the dunnage will ship back. Some of it may be discarded, but we do try to recycle and use as much as we can. Obviously, it's to our benefit and reduces our cost and waste for those kinds of goods. The cost is not really something that I think the consumer or a business would feel. The cost isn't really higher to ship things coming back. It's just slower. There's not a lot that's coming back. So when you look at a place like Hawaii, to go to the island of Oahu, it only takes 5 days to get there, but it can take almost 2 weeks to get back. Or if you look at Guam, they're not going to sail a container back to the mainland from Guam unless it's full or pretty full. So months can go by before that container is going to come back. So, that's more of the downfall. you can certainly pay to get an entire container to get your goods back, or you can wait in some instances.
Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that with us, because I don't know a whole lot about shipping out there. I'm sure Casey probably knows more than I do, because that's in her wheelhouse, but definitely interesting. I know in the past, I think we've shipped some Harleys to Hawaii a long time ago, but other than that, I don't know much about it. So
yes, it's funny that you mentioned that it's the same as shipping to any 48 states, because I think that's a lot of people's hesitation is they have in their mind that because it's leaving the actual continent that it needs customs or something special, and it really doesn't. So I've definitely been there, had that thought before, where it's a little bit, I don't want to say scary, but it's just different than shipping, straight California to New Jersey or something like that. So
it is different. And, I think everyone in logistics, no matter what type of shipments you handle or what kind of niche you might have, customer specific or product specific, we all have kind of like the standard objections that we regularly hear from customers. And I really hate the ones that I hear for Alaska and Hawaii, because it's always, well, it's too hard and it's too expensive. But it's not. It really isn't. It's only hard or expensive if you don't know who to call.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's probably the issue, right? Like finding a niche company that actually does that, so that you can actually do what you need to do.
Right. And, there's, I certainly am not talking down to any type of business in the logistics world, but, every customer that's shipping, they have a certain type of logistics partner that better meets their needs. So they may be a shipper that working directly with an LTL carrier is the best option. They may be a shipper that having a 3PL to help provide them, lower rates and more carriers in the database is better for them. They may need to have a transportation management company or, a 3PL to help provide other services to them outside of that. So, and we deal with all of these types of companies. Some of the difficulties come from that. So, if you get a rate in like a TMS or even from an LTL carrier, they're all going to produce a rate for you, but they don't all service these markets. And back in the day, these systems that produce rates on LTL carriers, they would have they'd be highlighted or have a little asterisk by them to tell you that your freight was going to be interlined. And these markets, that doesn't happen. So a lot of people think that if they call up carrier X and they get a rate, that carrier's handling it. And most of them hand off to companies like us. And that's fine. That can be a really good solution to a customer that wants one pro number from door to door. It makes it easy for them to provide it to their customer to track the shipment with just that one pro number. But if it's being outsourced, obviously there is a savings that they could have. So, if they're working with a 3PL or a broker, or even coming direct to us, they don't get that simplified, one pro door to door. They get two. Either they handle bringing it to us, or we hire an LTL carrier to bring it to us. But now you have two pro numbers, but now you save money. So, there's benefits here and there to all the options. And like I said, we work with all of these types of customers. We certainly don't, we don't pretend to tout that any of them are like the best method. Certainly working direct with a provider is always going to get you your best visibility and communication, and removes any markup. But, there are pros to all of the types of logistics people that we work with.
You touched on a little bit about the change in the industry and how just something as simple as having the asterisk on inner lines. What would you say, aside from that, is the biggest change you've seen over the years in the industry, and how has it affected your job?
I feel fortunate that I've worked in multiple aspects of the industry, which makes this question a little bit hard. So when I started at Panther, I worked in expedited freight and high value freight. And I left there and I went into supply chain for the automotive industry. So totally different industry. And when it comes to shipping, totally different type of network there. From that, I went into selling 3PL services, selling LTL services, and then did some truckload brokerage before coming to where I am now. So I've spent, short, maybe not so short time periods in these different parts of the industry, and they each have their own changes and difficulties that happen. I think that going back to the mid to late 2000s, handling a lot of truckload freight, it was a lot easier than what I hear it is now. The even handling it as expedites and high value, it just seemed really simple then. And even looking back now, I think that, rates, obviously everything gets more expensive. So, rates go up, but, capacity and availability and equipment changes, the rules have changed. So, I think truckload probably has had the biggest impact. The LTL world definitely had a big impact when they lost a major LTL carrier, going back to YRC. That had a huge impact. I think every LTL carrier had to feel that, from opportunities to buy equipment, facilities, to influxes of freight in certain locations that, were too much for other providers. I definitely think that was probably one of the biggest hits for the LTL market.
Yeah. And I mean, YRC was a carrier that certain locations only wanted to work with. So navigating that was huge and a difficult situation in the supply chain. So
yeah, I mean, when you talk about an industry and look at the major players of it and look at the players that go back to the foundations, I mean, you're talking about one of the oldest and biggest providers that was in the market.
Yeah, that was a big disruption, and we're still feeling it. There's still the docks being opened and their equipment being turned over. So it'll be interesting to see how these next couple of years play out in LTL, and with all the other changes with the NMFC numbers and going to more density base. So
yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one that's in the pipes right now coming for us. So
yes, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, 2025, we are definitely all eyes on that too. So, Hawaii and Alaska, the way that we rate freight for them, we try to really stick with kind of how the LTL world prices freight in the lower 48. So, Alaska is a freight class based and weight based market for the most part, for LTL freight, and Hawaii is based on cube. Does have a little bit of the weight involved there, but it the talks of NMFC codes and freight class and density definitely come into play for what we do as a business as well. So we are definitely going to be impacted too.
Yeah, hopefully all in a positive way.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in a good way.
I think it has, just like everything else. It has its benefits and it has its downfalls, I mean, there's good things to how it is now, but there's probably more bad things to how it is now, but
definitely.
Yeah. Trying to explain to a customer why it's going to, if they're going to ship like a pallet of bricks from, Atlanta to Cleveland, trying to explain to them why it's going to cost, $87 to ship the pallet of bricks versus, $800 to ship a car bumper. It becomes really hard to explain that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've definitely had those conversations more often than we would like, but
yeah,
I think with these changes, it will definitely help that. And it's just the way to go to make everyone's life simpler.
Yes, I do agree with that.
So we are on the Ladies of Leadership. So we want to talk a little about leadership and how you have grown in your role as a woman in a male-dominated field. So if you wanted to maybe talk about some of your strategies and maybe some things that you've gone through and how you've gotten to where you are today.
I think it all comes down to having some thick skin. I'm not going to lie. I think I have avoided the talk of being in a man's industry for a really, really long time. I'm one of those people that avoids hot topics. I did a training yesterday at our company for our team with LinkedIn. And it was one of the things I said was, when you're on LinkedIn, on social media, like avoid the hot stuff. Like, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics, don't talk about, any hot social topic. And this one's always kind of fallen in there with me because, I think when you start talking about, especially gender, and talking about some kind of a gender gap or a gender discrepancy, a lot of people right away, like this red light goes on and, they think that you're, going to bash the opposition or something and start saying how it's not unfair. But, there definitely is some issues when it comes to, our industry in terms of women. It is a male-led industry for sure. It is in management. It is in sales. I think that one of the best things that women can do in our industry is to just have some thick skin and kind of roll with the punches to some extent. And I hate to say that, but it really is true. I mean, you can rise above, or you can let other people kind of hold you down or push you away, right? So if you want to be successful in logistics, you can be. It for anyone, it's going to come down to the hard work that you put into it and the network that you build. And I think that, women definitely can gain some strength and unity in connecting together and helping each other, to teach each other, to promote each other, whether it be, referring clients, vendors, each other, things like that.
Listen, I so appreciate your response because I do the other podcast, Empowering Women into Logistics. And to be quite honest, I've learned a lot from that, from the different guests, because there are some very strong women that feel like we don't have to do things different for women, where other people feel like you have to because they need help or uplifting in their career. But I think everything you just said is correct. It's having a voice. And if you're not being heard at that company, then go to another company, especially if you're doing the hard work. And I think the other thing that comes up too, it's not about just helping women too. It's like hiring the best person for the job, whether it is a male or a woman. And that's the one thing I will say my dad had told me years ago when we became woman-owned: don't become a man hater. And at the end of the day, not a man hater over here.
You said it, not me.
Not a man hater over here. But in the same token, though, like, I've had my challenges, but like what I did though was continue to just be that force and that voice and build my network and all the things that you just said. And I think some women, some of them have confidence issues, and it's like, I want to be that advocate and try to help them find themselves, which I think has been very helpful for some women. But I mean, I agree with you 100%. It's definitely been a hot topic, and I didn't think some of the responses we got on that podcast were responses like I even thought about, to be quite honest. And then it was just so insightful. So.
I am really just kind of like a realistic person. I think, I don't really sugarcoat much. I see things for what they are usually. I feel like I can understand, part of the male domination in our industry. And I'd say it's not necessarily just in ours, but I mean, if you realistically think about it, and I look at my own life, women are the ones that bear children, right? So when you have children, so now who's going to take care of your children? Who's going to stay home? Traditionally, it's been women. And so, I don't think that there's no reason for like male bashing or anything like that. It's just kind of evolved that way through nature and just through, throughout history. So, but times have changed, and it doesn't mean it needs to be that way. So, when I moved from Cleveland to Atlanta back in 2010. And at the time I worked at Novellus, and my husband quit his job. And when we got here, we had a toddler, and the deal was that he could be semi-retired, and I say semi-retired because he had to do the laundry and clean the house and cook the meals, but he got to stay home with my daughter until it was time for her to go to school. So there was a role reversal that happened in our house, like many other people. And I think that the role reversal and times changing are really the big player there. So you can't really get upset at anybody for things being the way that they are, but you can understand why they are that way and, forge through and create change. So it doesn't need to stay that way. I think, being visible, being vocal, being strong are the ways that you do that. If you don't feel that you can be successful where you are because of something like your gender or your age or your race or there's all these other things that kind of hold people back or lend themselves to certain industries or businesses being dominated by something, right? It's not just women. So if you feel like any of those things are holding you back or impeding or affecting you, be strong enough to move on. Change is opportunity.
Yeah, and I love that, because the other part of that too is, like you said, women were at home, and then some households, both of them had to go to work just to pay the bills, and that's part of the change too, along with what you talked about. And at the end of the day, like, I think you're absolutely spot on with that. And anyone that's listening, I mean, that's good advice.
Yeah, I'd say it's solid advice for anyone in any career, honestly. So
I think the other thing that comes with that, and I've seen it in my own experience, is I think that when people in general, it could be a man or a woman, when they see a employee or a candidate that is a mom, there's an assumption made right there that they're a mom, they have kids at home that need them, right? They have to be available. They have to drive kids places. They have to make lunches. They have to go to school conferences. They have to be there. And so I've seen, even with myself, where the assumption's been made that, Monica can't travel. She has kids. Oh, heck no, I can travel. Like, get me away from my kids.
Me too. Like last week, I was away for 4 days. I was like, woohoo, got a break,
Yeah. I think things like that on a really big scale happen. And like I said, I understand it. And I've kind of grown to recognize things like that. And if you can recognize things like that, instead of it becoming something that makes you unhappy or feels like you're being held back somewhere, stand up and say, hey, to your boss, I just want to ask you, do you think I can't travel because I have kids? Because I really want to go travel the world. A lot of times, if you just go to someone and approach them in a pleasant manner, not coming at them aggressively, you just draw out this topic you want to talk about, you'll come to find out, and they'll come to find out that maybe they did have a wrong impression. And instead of you being in the wrong situation, you're just misunderstood by somebody, and you might actually be in the right position. So communication is king.
Yeah, in today's world, we can't assume anything, because like you said, the roles are changing, and some parents, the dad stays home, or, and the mom works. So I think we need to just be more open. And I believe a lot of companies are seeing that, and it's really changing for the whole landscape. So
I agree.
Good stuff. So one last thing before we let you go. Your main passion project. I know you talked a little bit about your involvement in the community and stuff. Why don't you tell us about your side gig with the artistic stuff?
Yeah. So, I think everybody has hobbies. You have things you're good at that might not be related in any way to what you do for, your paycheck. But going back to when I was in college, I went to art school. So when I was at Marquette, I also went to the Milwaukee School of Art and Design. Just arts and crafts have always been something that I do in my spare time. And living in Ohio, once I got married, we were kind of on the edge of Amish country. And we had the Amish barns around us with these geometric patterns on them. And a family member said one day, why don't you try painting one of those? And I said, well, I never thought about it. So I started doing it, and you can see them behind me up on the ledge. But I've been designing hex signs, which is a Pennsylvania Dutch or Amish tradition. They're just designs. They're not like witchcraft or voodoo or anything like that. They the colors and the symbols are just, people actually think that. So, but the colors.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, the colors and the symbols are all representative of things. You take colors and, red is love, and orange is like success and wealth. And so the colors all have representations. They typically use shapes that are more like what you would see in like a classic type quilt that somebody would make. I kind of am like a modern artist on these, where I'm very colorful. I kind of get away from the more country type motif of them to be more modern, but I've been designing them. It's something I could do when my kids were little. At night, the kids are playing. I sit on the couch with a sign in my lap, and I draw it and I paint it. And I opened up an eBay store back when eBay was like the only, online marketplace. And so I've been selling them for many years, and I do have them reproduced into all kinds of items. So I sell limited edition prints. I sell gift items that they have been printed to, like mugs and keychains and beach towels, kitchen gadgets. There's anything I can think of to put a round design on, I will have somebody print it and try and sell it. So all of the stuff that I have, all my originals that I actually have in my collection are for sale on my website, as well as all kinds of other items. So check it out.
Check it. Well, what's your website? You want to share that?
hexsigndesign.com. And I also have a LinkedIn page that I just started, so you can follow it there.
Awesome.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
To round off this interview, why don't you give us your one piece of advice to women who are just starting in this industry?
So my piece of advice to women starting out in logistics is to stay strong, keep your head on straight, stay focused and positive, and work on networking with people, not just women, but people, and keep a really good circle of good people that are successful people, because you are what you surround yourself with.
Love it. Well, we're at the end of our show, Monica, and thank you so much for sharing your professional and personal journey with us. So for more information about you, how can people find you in Seawide Logistics? Is it Seawide Express? I was going to say
Seawide
Logistics.
Express. Seawide Express. So I would say we have a website for Seawide Express, seawideexpress.com. Our LinkedIn page is regularly updated every week, at least twice a week. So that's a great place to get information about us, to get, we try to stay current with the times, provide relevant information about the markets, changes. My LinkedIn page is a great way to also stay up to date on these markets. I do try to post content on a regular basis about the markets, particularly if there's service disruptions, weather issues, things like that. But also sharing things that are unique about these markets to just try to help teach people about, what the people in Alaska and Hawaii and Guam are doing and what they're selling, and, just interesting cultural things like that too. So LinkedIn's probably the best bet.
Well, perfect. Well, thanks everyone for listening today, and stay tuned for more inspiring stories with the LLC podcast. Have a great day.
Thanks.